Hey everyone, let's talk about Texas in the summer of 2025, a season that's been anything but calm. Picture this. The wide open skies that make the Lone Star State so iconic are churning with chaos. This summer, Texas got hit hard by back-to-back storms that turned everyday life into something out of a disaster movie. Cities were rocked, emergency crews were stretched thin, and folks across the state are now left wondering, how much more can Texas take? Let's dive into what happened, and I'll walk you through the wild ride these storms brought to Austin and Amarillo. So, let's start with Austin. On September 16, 2025, just as the evening was settling in, things got intense. Around 6:30 p.m., the atmosphere was like a powder keg, hot, humid air smashed into a cold front rolling down from the north. Boom! A supercell thunderstorm erupted. I'm talking 77-mile-an-hour winds, strong enough to knock over trees and tear through neighborhoods. Then came the hail, some as big as baseballs, pounding cars, smashing windows, and punching holes in rooftops. Can you imagine the sound of that? It's like a war zone out there. Streets turned into rivers in minutes, trapping drivers who probably thought they were just heading home from work. Emergency lines were lighting up, hundreds of calls poured in, with people stuck in their cars or even their homes, just trying to stay safe. Now, let's shift to Amarillo just a few hours later. The chaos didn't stop in Austin. It was like the storms decided to tag team Texas. By 7 p.m., Amarillo was getting hammered by its own monster storm. Hailstones nearly 3 inches wide, think golf balls on steroids, were slamming into homes, businesses, and even the highways. Winds hit 70 miles an hour, strong enough to shake power lines and knock out grids. Interstate 40 completely shut down after a semi-truck jackknifed it on a flooded stretch of road, clogging up traffic for hours. And if that wasn't wild enough, hail piled up along Highway 287, creating these surreal, snow-like drifts. In the middle of summer, it's the kind of thing that makes you stop and say, only in Texas. As these storms roared through, emergency teams were working overtime, pushed to their breaking point. Dispatchers, firefighters, police, they were all in overdrive trying to keep up with the chaos. And now, as Texas picks up the pieces, there's this uneasy feeling in the air. Recovery is going to take time, and with more storm threats on the horizon, people are starting to ask, are these once-in-a-decade storms becoming the new normal? It's a tough question, and one that's got Texans looking to the skies with a mix of grit and worry. In Austin, the storm hit hard and fast. Within just minutes of the first hailstones crashing down, more than 70,000 people were suddenly left without power. Imagine that, whole neighborhoods going dark in the middle of a downpour. Emergency lines lit up almost instantly. Hundreds of calls flooded 911, many from residents trapped by rapidly rising waters. Firefighters and EMS crews had no time to waste. By nightfall, they had already carried out at least 9 water rescues, pulling drivers from cars that had disappeared underwater and helping families escape homes that were filling up like bathtubs. Meanwhile, in Amarillo, the situation was no less dangerous, just different. Giant hailstones were smashing through windshields and blocking major highways. Police had to reroute traffic off Interstate 40 so rescue teams could reach people stuck in damaged vehicles. Utility crews were out in the storm too, fighting to control power lines sparking dangerously in the rain, while city workers rushed to unclog drains before the streets turned into rivers. And yet, even in the middle of all that chaos, moments of bravery stood out. In Austin, neighbors literally linked arms, forming a human chain in waist-deep water to guide an elderly woman to safety. In Amarillo, a truck driver pulled off something incredible, using his rig as a shield to protect stranded cars from incoming hail. Quick thinking like that saved lives. As the night wore on, the community spirit kicked in. Volunteers, local churches, and shelters sprang into action. Bottled water, blankets, even gymnasiums were opened up to families who suddenly had nowhere to go. The storm may have passed, but the resilience of these communities never wavered. Time and again, it's in the toughest moments that the strength of ordinary people shines the brightest. You know, when people talk about hailstorms, most of us imagine a quick burst of ice pellets that leave a few dents in the car. But what hit Texas on September 16th was way beyond that. By sunrise, the destruction was hard to ignore. In Austin, entire neighborhoods looked like they had been through a battlefield. Streets were littered with broken glass, splintered wood, and cars so mangled by baseball-sized hail, they were barely recognizable. Even major landmarks weren't spared. The Texas State Capitol and the University of Texas campus both suffered heavy roof and window damage. And to make matters worse, the city's public transit system came to a complete standstill, as buses were forced to reroute around blocked roads and flooded intersections. Insurance experts are already sounding the alarm, saying claims could reach tens of millions of dollars. Car dealerships, apartment complexes, and small businesses are among the hardest hit. Now, if you thought Austin had it bad, farther north in Amarillo the situation was just as devastating. Along Highway 287, the hail piled up so thick it looked more like a snowstorm than the aftermath of a thunderstorm. Roofs were punctured, siding ripped away, and low-lying intersections flooded after storm drains were overwhelmed. One incident really highlighted the risks when a semi-truck crashed on Interstate 40. That single accident created hours of gridlock and disrupted regional supply chains, proving how quickly extreme weather can ripple through the system. The damage didn't stop at roads and buildings. Power grids and water systems were also hammered. At the peak, more than 90,000 homes and businesses between Austin and Amarillo were without electricity. Water treatment facilities couldn't keep up, and runoff contaminated local supplies, forcing boil water advisories for thousands of households. It's a stark reminder of just how fragile our infrastructure can be when nature pushes back. Meteorologists say what happened in Central Texas was a textbook case of extreme atmospheric volatility. A hot, unstable air mass collided with a powerful cold front, and the result was the perfect setup for a supercell thunderstorm, one of the most dangerous weather events we can face. These massive rotating storm systems aren't just about heavy rain. They can throw multiple threats at once. We're talking giant hail, damaging winds, and sudden flash floods, all packed into a single event. Radar even picked up updrafts so strong that they were able to hold hailstones in the clouds until they grew to the size of baseballs, before finally crashing to the ground. Imagine the force it takes to keep a chunk of ice that big suspended in the sky. Take Amarillo, for example. The setup there was basically a perfect recipe for destructive hail. Steep temperature drop-offs with height, plenty of Gulf moisture pumping in, and strong vertical wind shear. Put those together, and you get long-lasting storm updrafts capable of creating hail nearly 3 inches across. That's large enough to punch holes through roofs, shatter windshields, and strip the paint right off cars within seconds. And here's the bigger picture. Experts are warning this isn't some random fluke. It's part of a larger trend. As global temperatures rise, the atmosphere can hold more moisture. That means when storms fire up, they tend to dump shorter but way more intense bursts of rain and ice. The Texas State Climatologist's Office even pointed out that reports of large hail in parts of the southern plains have jumped by almost 20% over the last 10 years. That's a pretty clear signal. For Texans, this isn't just about watching a wild weather event from the sidelines. It's a harsh reminder that extreme weather is showing up more often, hitting harder, and leaving behind bigger bills. The storms that tore through Texas on September 16th weren't just numbers on a weather chart. They were lived experiences filled with fear, chaos, and unbelievable acts of courage. In Austin, imagine families sitting in pitch-black homes as baseball-sized hail smashed through windows and punched holes straight through rooftops. Parents were literally shielding their kids under mattresses, hoping and praying the storm would pass quickly. One area near Hyde Park looked almost like a war zone. Cars lined up on the street were destroyed in minutes. Windshields shattered, metal dented beyond repair. It didn't look like a neighborhood anymore. It looked like something out of an apocalyptic movie. Over in Amarillo, it was a different nightmare. Drivers on Interstate 40 had to abandon their cars when walls of hail and pounding rain made the road impossible to drive. Some people got trapped under overpasses as floodwaters rose, turning safe spots into dangerous traps. One semi-truck jackknifed it across the highway, blocking traffic for hours and leaving travelers stranded with nowhere to go. But here's the part that really stands out. In the middle of all that chaos, people stepped up. Strangers, who had never even spoken before, formed human chains to help families wade through the floodwaters. Shop owners unlocked their doors, offering shelter to anyone who needed it. Neighbors grabbed whatever tools they had and started clearing debris long before emergency crews arrived. First responders worked non-stop. In Austin alone, firefighters carried out at least 9 high-water rescues. And in Amarillo, police and EMS were flooded literally, with more than 200 weather-related calls in just a few hours. Yes, the storms shattered glass, ripped apart rooftops, flooded streets, and downed power lines. But what really stands out is the resilience of Texans. These communities showed, once again, that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit shines the brightest. The true financial cost of the September 16th storms is just starting to show, and the numbers are already staggering. Early estimates suggest that damages could climb well into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Take Austin, for example. Local car dealerships woke up to find entire lots of vehicles battered beyond repair. Hailstones, some as big as softballs, left dents, shattered glass, and twisted metal everywhere. Insurance companies were instantly flooded with calls. Within the first 24 hours, tens of thousands of claims had already been filed, covering everything from broken windshields to punctured rooftops and destroyed siding. And that's just the private damage. Public infrastructure took a brutal hit too. The Texas state capitol saw major damage to government buildings, while the University of Texas reported smashed windows and roof failures. Even schools weren't spared. Dozens of them reported enough structural damage to shut down temporarily. And here's the kicker: city officials say more than 140 bridges and culverts across central Texas now need inspections. That means traffic slowdowns, detours, and freight delays for weeks to come. Meanwhile, Amarillo faced a different kind of disaster. Heavy flooding forced major shutdowns along Interstate 40, one of the busiest freight corridors in the entire country. Truckers were stranded, shipments delayed, and entire supply chains disrupted. Repair crews have their work cut out for them, clearing debris, repaving highways, and restoring drainage systems. Experts say it could take weeks before things start to feel normal again. Now, recovery is underway, but it's not going to be easy. Construction teams from neighboring states have already been called in to fast-track repairs. Utility companies are working around the clock to restore power to more than 80,000 customers. And to support those hit hardest, cooling centers and temporary shelters have opened their doors, providing food, water, and medical care for displaced families. Meteorologists point out that these weren't your average thunderstorms. What slammed into Austin and Amarillo was the result of a perfect collision of forces. A hot, moisture-packed air mass surged in from the Gulf, only to collide with a powerful cold front diving south. The outcome? Chaos in the sky that turned into destruction on the ground. That collision of weather systems created the unstable energy needed for a massive supercell thunderstorm. And it didn't stop there. The storm packed in giant hail and winds strong enough to rival a hurricane. Up north, Amarillo's spot on the high plains made it the perfect setup for hail. Strong wind shear combined with unusually steep temperature drops allowed hailstones to cycle inside the storm, growing larger every time they were lifted and dropped. Some reached nearly 3 inches across, about the size of a baseball, before crashing down on cars, rooftops, and highways. Now, here's something worth pointing out. Texas has always been a hotspot for severe weather. The mix of Gulf moisture, desert heat, and mountain systems is a recipe for chaos. But what's different today is the frequency and intensity. Climate experts warn that as the air warms, it can hold more moisture, and that means storms pack more power, heavier rain, larger hail, and faster-forming disasters. Events like these aren't just freak accidents anymore. They're becoming more common. That raises some big questions. Are our roads, homes, and power grids strong enough to handle it? Are emergency systems and insurance structures ready for what's ahead? For Texans, September 16th wasn't just a stormy day. It was a preview of a more unpredictable future. And all those white streaks falling from the sky, that wasn't rain. That was hail. Now let's zoom out. September 16th, 2025 will be remembered as the day Texas skies turned dangerous, unleashing supercells and hailstorms that shattered homes, vehicles, and daily life across the state. Austin and Amarillo, two cities hundreds of miles apart, were united under the same violent system. A powerful reminder that no place, no community, is beyond nature's reach. But here's the part we can't ignore. Houses can be repaired, cars can be replaced, lives cannot. Stories poured in of first responders putting themselves in harm's way and neighbors joining hands to pull each other to safety. That human resilience is our greatest shield. Still, resilience alone won't cut it. Preparedness, stronger infrastructure, and public awareness are no longer nice to have. They are survival tools. So let me ask you, if a storm like this hit your town tonight, would you be ready? Do you know where your safe shelter is? Do you have an emergency plan for your family? If you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more updates. Stay informed, stay prepared, and above all, stay safe.